Well, it's partly because when I started teaching world history here, one of the books I used was co-authored by Marcus Rediker along with Peter Linebaugh, and it was called The Many-Headed Hydra. And it was about what they call the hidden history of the revolutionary Atlantic from the 16th century through to the end of the 18th, early 19th century. And a central chapter there draws primarily on Marcus's work on pirates, and especially this period of piracy between the 1690s and the 1720s, when he thinks communal democratic piracy was at its peak. And if I was having students read that, one of the things I knew was that they were probably much more familiar with the movies than they were with the background history. So I wanted to meet them where they were. The movies are based on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. It was first introduced at Disneyland and is now present in almost all the theme parks that Disney has around the world. My own work is much more about the ways in which, as I put it, Disney hijacks the history of rebel piracy and the associations with a popular rebellious spirit, and in fact ties that to the interests of capital. The conclusion is that we think of them as something like escapist entertainment, and of course there's lots of things that are enjoyable about them, sly, cheeky humor, lots of action, but they are also forms of teaching, and they're forms of teaching that try and point us towards acting in particular ways by shaping the ways that we think. One of the very striking things about Pirates of the Caribbean was it's set in the Caribbean, of course, at least in the first two episodes, in a period that's vaguely meant to be around this time that Linebaugh and Rediker write about, the early 18th century. Now, of course, the film emphasized that there's a struggle going on about control of the seas, and they cast it as a struggle between the British government and pirates. But what they don't tell you is why the British wanted to control the seas. They wanted to control the seas because they wanted to dominate the slave trade, so that they could supply slaves as cheaply to the plantations that they operated in places like Jamaica, which is the place in which the films begin, Port Royal, Jamaica. And so there's this huge silence in the films about the fact that the struggle over the seas is a struggle over both the plantation system for producing sugar in the Caribbean and other goods, and over control of the slave. Capitalism has had contradictory implications for the world. It's brought us a lot of good things, but we could probably in the long run do better. But our ability to think about how we could do better is really inhibited by the ways in which the more embarrassing sides of the past have been hidden from us. I think on the whole they find it interesting. And I've certainly had a few people write to me and say that it's made them look at the film in entirely new ways.